This video will be the third video in a series leading up to the production of these segmented wood eggs. All of these videos are listed on our YouTube channel and are also listed on the SIS Wood website. In the first video, I described the production of the feature rings, which are these rings here, which are used usually as the center piece of the segmented wood egg. In the second video, I described the production of the top and bottom rings, such as these. And then in this third video, I will describe the production of the filler rings or designer rings used to complete the design of the segmented wood eggs. And this is just an example of some of the filler rings which I'll be describing in this video. The final video will describe the combining of these three segmented components for the production of the segmented wood eggs, and this video will be available shortly. We begin the production of these segmented wood designer or filler rings using the same techniques described in our previous videos for the production of segmented wood rings. For most of my segmented bowls, bells, and eggs, I normally use 18 segments per layer. The segments are first cut on table saw or bandsaw using a segmenting sled. I make a variety of designs in these rings. Some I make are solid or one color segments. Others have a contrasting spacer wood between the segments, and others have alternating contrasting wood segments. After the segments have been cut, they're glued together to produce the segmented rings. For the gluing of the segments to produce the segmented rings, my preference is to use rubber bands to clamp the glued segments. The rubber band clamps produce more uniform and round segmented disc. After the discs are glued and dried, they are used to produce the designer or filler rings. In this video, we will demonstrate how the segmented discs are sliced into thin disc using the Accu-Slice bandsaw slicer, how they are arranged into patterns, and then how they're glued together to produce the segmented filler or design rings. Rings of various diameters and thicknesses are produced in order to have the sizes needed to produce the correct dimensional ratios of height to width for the finished segmented wood egg. After the segmented wood blocks have been glued, they are put into the lathe, and then using a Forster bit, the inner hole of the segmented block is cleaned up and drilled to a standard dowel size, which fits one of my alignment and gluing jigs. I produced a number of segmented wood discs for my next project, which is going to be some segmented wood eggs. And what I'm going to do is making some of the additional layers for the segmented eggs. And what I'm going to be doing, I have a number of blocks here. This one is Padauk and Maple. This one is Walnut and Maple. I got some Cedar and Maple, and then some solid just maple segmented wood. And what I'm going to be doing is slicing this into layers between 50 thousandths and 100 thousandths inch thick. I begin by putting a piece of double-sided tape on my piece to be cut, and then attaching that to my sacrificial fence on the Accu-Slice. And then give it a quick clamp for 15 seconds or so, just to set the tape. Next, zero out my index table. Push my wood against the bandsaw blade. Tighten up my coarse adjustment guides. And then advance the blade in one full thickness, which is the curve for the blowout blade. And then just take off maybe 25 thousandths just to give me a flat surface for my subsequent cuts. Okay, that's squared off my board so that all my subsequent cuts will be exactly parallel to that surface. So the first thing I do is I loosen my mag jigs. I turn my blade in one full turn, which is 50 thousandths of an inch, which is the curve for the blade. And then I want to cut slivers of wood, say 75 thousandths of an inch thick. So that's one full turn is 50 thousandths, and then another 25 thousandths. And I'll repeat that, and I'll make 10 or 12 cuts, whatever I get out of this piece of wood at that thickness. So I just keep repeating the process of cutting these thin slivers all the same thickness. And now I end up with 13 slices of wood from that one segmented wood block, each layer being 75 thousandths of an inch thick. And you notice my index marks on here. I put that in the beginning just to mark the orientation of the pieces, so when I glue them back together I can use that mark as a guide to make sure everything lines up correctly. Next time I'm going to slice some solid maple segmented blocks for the top and bottom pieces for those segmented featured pieces that I'm making. Move my block against the wood. Rotate it one full turn, the curve of the blade, plus another 25 thousandths. And there I produce 14 slices of wood from that one block of segmented maple. Each of these slivers is 50 thousandths of an inch thick, and they'll become the top and bottom pieces of the assemblies I'm putting together for the segmented wood eggs. I'm now going to begin the assembly and glue up of these additional layers for the segmented wood eggs. And what I'm doing in this is I'm taking 3 of the segmented disc, rotating them a half a segment to create a pattern like this, and then I'll be adding a maple top and bottom, and this will be one of the layers for the segmented wood eggs I'm putting together. So this begins with, first of all, sanding each of these lightly just to get rid of the fuzzies off the edge. You can see some of the fuzzies on the edge here on this maple in particular. And sometimes you get a little bit of an edge at the end of the bandsaw cut. You got to sand that off. And then, so begin sanding first, and then gluing on one of my jigs that I made. And then eventually we'll assemble these into the finished egg. So let's begin with some of the sanding first. And this is just a light sanding to make sure that burr is gone off the edge, and then getting rid of the fuzzies on the edge. And that's the only sanding I do. I cut off the Accu-Slice is good enough that you don't have to do any additional sanding on that flat surface. Now this is ready for glue up. So I begin the glue up of these 3 pieces of segmented wood to create my pattern piece. And I had previously drilled this hole straight on the lathe for just this purpose. Now it rides on this guide, and all the discs, when I put them on there, will be perfectly aligned with one another. And I have my index position marked, and I can use that as a guide for putting additional disc on. And this disc, I'm just rotating it a half a segment and then clamping it in position. So clamp this, let this set for about 5-10 minutes just to set the glue before I glue on the 3rd layer. And what I do, I align the top and bottom with the index marks. Get them nice and straight, and then once again clamp. And then let this set for at least 5-10 minutes. Okay, now I'm ready to put the top and bottom pieces on. Now these have a different hole pattern, so I can't use my jig, so I just use a flat plate to glue it up. And this disc is slightly oversized, but I'll just sand that off later. What I do want to do when I align this for glue up is make sure that the pieces alternate, again, just for strength, so that this joint doesn't line up with that joint. It has to be staggered. So we just align everything in the middle, and then we'll clamp to this block. That'll keep it all nice and flat. And then once again, let that set for about 5 minutes before I go on to the next layer. And now ready to glue on the 5th and final layer. Okay, just now align it with the bottom one. I'll allow that to dry for at least 2 hours. The following is the sampling of the mini segmented designer or filler rings produced as described in this video.